to order. The first thing I'm going to start with is roll call.
Commissioner French? Present. Commissioner Hopkins?
Present. Present. Second thing I'm going to go to, if there's any public comments, now is the time to do that.
Thank you. Members of the Commission, I just have a couple of remarks after I saw the agenda. As a Commission, you do not have to go to closed meeting to consider any opinion of council. That decision is yours and yours alone. I think it's especially important in this case that you choose to be transparent to my client Blake as well as the citizens of Cadillac that are here today. The Open Meeting Act requires that you undertake all of your deliberations in an open meeting. Blake Meyer's due process rights that I discussed the last time we were here requires that you consider anything regarding this case, including any movement for deliberations in an open meeting. On behalf of Blake, and I think on behalf of the citizens of Cadillac, I'm asking you to please choose transparency in these proceedings.
Are there any other public comments at this time? Okay, at this time, I would like the minutes looked at, and I would like a motion on the minutes, please.
Open session
As far as the minutes
Yeah.
on open session, closed session, and open.
I just saw one little typo on just on it, it's not in nature, but just the adjournment, under adjournment on the minutes.
For which meeting?
The meeting at 5:15.
5:15 open.
Yeah, just under adjournment, just says there'd be for further business.
Okay. Okay. Are we doing these in separate motions or all in one? All at once? Why don't you do separate motions?
Yeah, I'd like to, is there a motion to approve the January 9th, 2014, 5:15 open session meeting?
So moved.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? This time I would like a motion on the minutes of January 9th, 2014, meeting 5:15, closed session.
Well, I'd like to make a comment on those.
If it's a substantive comment on the substance of closed meeting
It
minutes,
is.
then we have to go into closed session to discuss.
Well, it's not substantive, it's just the way it was.
Then that's something we have to go into closed session to discuss to make a correction to those minutes, because we can't disclose the substance of closed meeting minutes.
I think, okay.
But you can do that. You can make the motion to go into closed session to address
Discuss
that.
those minutes. Okay, well, then I'll make that motion, that we discuss the minutes of the closed session, in closed session. Okay.
Support.
And you have to do a roll call. Vote on that one. Hopkins? French?
Yes.
Myron?
Yes.
And this is solely to address your comment on the closed meeting minutes, so.
I would like to have a motion made for the minutes of January 9th, 2014, 5:15 meeting closed session to be approved.
I move that we accept them with the changes made.
All those in favor?
Yeah. Yeah, aye.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to have an approval motion for the minutes of January 9th, 2014 meeting, the 6 o'clock meeting. It was the open session.
I move we approve those minutes.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? At this time, I would like to ask for a motion for the civil service to go into a closed session. All deliberations will be done in the open session when we return, and decision-making done at that time.
I move we go to closed session.
Second. All those in favor?
The motion needs to state that the closed session is to discuss a confidential attorney-client privilege written legal opinion.
Okay. I move we go to closed session to discuss a confidential written legal opinion.
I second.
All those in favor?
That has to be by roll call vote.
Myers?
Yes.
French?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to call the meeting back to order, out of closed session. We're gonna get it started right here. I guess the first question that I have would be where it was brought up that it was a conflict of interest for the city to represent the Civil Service Commission.
Right, and I'd be happy to address that, and I believe what you're referring to is a comment made during the public hearing that Mr. Meyer's counsel was uncomfortable with the city attorney representing the Civil Service Commission in this matter. And of course, we researched that, and there's actually an Attorney General opinion directly on point, wherein the Michigan Attorney General determined that Act 78 does not authorize the City Civil Service Commission to employ independent counsel. Rather, the city attorney has the duty and authority to counsel and represent boards and commissions of the municipality, and Section 8 of Act 78 makes the assistance of the city attorney available to the Civil Service Commission. That's directly on point. I don't think it could be clearer that not only is it not a conflict of interest, but that the city attorney has a duty and authority to represent this commission.
Okay. That clear, I guess I'd like to get the comments started. Ruth Ann, we're going to let you go first.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you all came and out of your busy evening to come and listen to our deliberations about this rather unfortunate set of circumstances. I'd like to, on behalf of myself and, I don't know, probably my fellow commissioners, apologize for the errors and the mistakes that were made in the original eligibility list that, that we came up with that kind of initiated some of the misunderstandings that has brought us here tonight. Partly that has come from the fact that there's some ambiguous language in the rules that we're charged with following that, and the initial one, at least in my mind, was that I questioned was the difference between the 10 highest scores and the 10 highest candidates. Initially going into establishing that list, I thought, and I think the procedures that we followed were that we were to establish a list using the 10 highest scores, which, because we had multiple scores, made for that larger list. It also made sense to me that we have a larger list because the rules called for a 2-year window to keep that list open. So it kind of made sense that you would want to have a larger list, and that was the logic that I followed when we were going through that initial part of the process. I'm also very new to this commission, so these rules are pretty new to me, and I didn't have a lot of experience working with them. But anyway, that being said, I wanted to apologize to Blake and to the other people who were in that initial list, in that, and also the fire department, all of you folks that are waiting to fill a vacancy, that we're struggling to try and accommodate you, and appreciate your patience with us, because it's a complicated, it has turned into a complicated process, and so I just wanted to apologize for that. And then, regarding the ambiguity of the language, I am committed, and I think my fellow commissioners, to try and tighten up that language and have some future work sessions so that we never run into this scenario again where certain words are misunderstood, or that there's too much wiggle room in the interpretation of how we might proceed with procedural things like developing eligibility lists in the hiring process. At this point, I guess that's as much as I want to say. I'm sure I may have something else. Bill, you want to go ahead and make some comments?
Yeah, a number of them were a number of concerns that I had as well, and also I apologize, I'm not in my normal voice tonight, not feeling real well, but I will say that this has been a long ordeal. I've been on the commission now for over 10 years and never experienced anything like this before, and quite frankly, I don't want to experience anything like this again. But I do think that, as Ruth indicated, there was we feel there was an error made. We corrected an error, and clearly we were trying to follow the city. Act 78 will also trying to follow the rules and regulations of the Cadillac Civil Service Commission, and that's what we do. That's what we need to do. And to Ruth's point as well, that certainly there's some gray area in here that needs to be cleaned up. And again, as Ruth said, I will also commit to working on that. But these are the rules as just they are today, and we're trying to follow them as best we can. That's all I really have to say at this point.
Oh, I know. I got another comment here, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I have a visual impairment, so it's really hard for me to read my own notes that I write for myself. And one of those questions that were raised, and that I even considered as we were going through the process when we had 16 candidates on the list, and the 5 that didn't show up for the agility training, it made sense to me to maintain the 16 people on the list, because 5 of them became ineligible, which left us with the 11 that we did the oral interviews on. And so and even in the notes of the Civil Service Rule 305.3C, it even states that in that rule that if they don't show up for the agility test, they're ineligible, and which speaks to the point that Blake's attorney made about the fact that shouldn't we have, or he questioned, shouldn't we have recertified the list at that point to have then taken those 5 names off the list, which would have allowed us, or at least the logic we were following at that time, that we would have then brought the additional 5 people up from a lower test score. And in my mind, that still makes sense to me, even though it's not how the rules are strictly interpreted when you say you have a fixed list of strictly the 10 highest scores, which is what the rules actually say after we deliberated them more closely. Okay.
Well, I too apologize for this. I mean, this whole thing started with, if anybody is not familiar with it, the first thing that we added to the rules this year with the blessing of the fire department was the merit points. Everybody's aware of the merit points. We looked at the list. I feel as chairperson I should have looked at that better. We missed one of the on-call firefighters' points. He had a right to those points, just as Mr. Meyering got his points, and so did the other people right there on it. I mean, that's where it bumped to where the list went to. The last person was with 85, below 85. Should not have been on there, but I mean, how we interpreted that is we had 4 people with 83 scores and a couple other ties, counting them as one, where it states in the Cadillac rules there how you go over for tiebreakers and that. I mean, looking at the things, I asked Chris Yemmons that night and what Fred said. I mean, I know how things were done in the past, but somewhere along the line from where the past things have changed. In the old days, they did certify the list. They did the written test, they did the agility test, and then they certified the list. If that was done, the people that didn't show up for the agility test or passed it would not be on there, and keep people on there. I mean, I guess you're always going to get people that are on the list that maybe drop, because this isn't the only place that the candidates are applying for a job. I've seen it in the last 10 years that I've been on there, that we would go to call somebody about a job and they've already taken a job.
But have you ever had 5 that don't show up?
It can thin out. I mean, where it got a little complicated with us is we were hiring 2 positions for the 10 versus that right there. So, I mean, that is something we need to, after this meeting, within the future, I would like to sit down with council. I would like to get a representative from the city and the police to let them get their suggestions on the rule, not necessarily letting them write a ticket to it, but at least give their suggestions there so that we can sit down and look at these rules closer and make them more understandable, make them more flowing. Act 78 is to allow everybody a fair shot at it, get the politics out of there on that there, but it also states too, with the Act 78, as of 1935, it requires the City Civil Service Commission to make rules providing for examinations. If you look at section 305, 301.1, it says all examinations given for the various positions in the department shall be arranged in such a manner as to determine fairly the qualification and the ability of the application to fill the position for which the examination is being given. All examination papers shall be marked and scored by a person of group or persons experienced in such procedures. The respective eligibility list for entry-level position in the department shall be determined solely by written examination scores. And that's what we did on the list. Is there was a mistake made. We had to make it right. And that's just where I feel at is 85 is the bottom score right there.
And speaking to the transparency issue, this is the first time where we've had a chance to meet on this, and so we really don't have a preconceived idea how we're going to go here. It's just unfortunate that things have took the course, have taken the course that they have, because people have invested time and money into pursuit of a job that certainly they're qualified for. Nobody has ever questioned Blake's qualifications to be a good fireman. But the procedures that we're entrusted with upholding is what is the question here. And the eligibility list, as we initially approved them, like Dan said, wasn't done according to the strict interpretation of the rules. And as you said, even though they've been apparently interpreted in other ways in the past, that's what, first of all, going forward, we need to clear up. Unfortunately, it leaves us with a situation now that nobody's going to probably feel good about. I mean, there's going to be, with differing opinions on positions and vying for one position that's left, you know, there's going to be 13 whichever way you go with that decision. So, I just encourage people to kind of take the higher road, and however our decision comes out tonight, that, you know, going forward, kind of just look at it as a lesson. You've had opportunities to interview, to do the agility test, to do all of the steps of the procedure, and you should have learned a lot about yourself, and maybe go from there with go forward with that as your.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate that it went as far as it did.
Yeah, I mean,
It's unfortunate there. I mean, I guess you look at it, the experience there of doing the agility test, the commission sat in on that. We took a more of a hands-on approach this time. I sat through the captain's interviews and promotions there. We wanted to take a hands-on approach there. We sat through and interviewed a number of candidates. All candidates had some good points about them on it there. Blake had an excellent interview there. I mean, and when we saw the right, or the wrong, we had to make it right. When Blake called, I encouraged him to have a hearing on there. It's just like PK had a right to talk to his attorney if he questions the rules, and he had a right too to appeal that. All clients did have a right to do that. I think in the near future, though, with Section 105, anything, petitions or communication to the commission, it shall be put in writing, or we are not going to address it on that part of it right there. But it's an unfortunate thing, but there are rules here that you have to follow. I know it was brought up what past rules and stuff were done. That was some interpretations and things that maybe been changed. The 10 years I've been on this, there's never been questioned to this magnitude, and I know farther back that it had never been tested there. I spoke with my dad on that, and he said in 35 years this was never brought up, things brought up. But it came to a head here, we had to address it, and we did.
Like you said, it's just unfortunate that it went from September to November, and a lot of consecutive steps in the hiring process took place before it was brought to our attention of the errors that were.
This would have been done right the first time, it would be there. I mean,
Right.
It's unfortunate.
No, other than the fact that, I said before, we're a 3-person commission, we live in a community, We're trying to do the right thing for the entire community. This isn't a paid position, we're volunteers, and we're trying to look out for the good of everyone. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody realizes that that's where we're at. And I know a number of the candidates, some of them I've known since they were little kids, some of them I've known when their parents were little kids. And it's gratifying to see. I mean, I remember talking about it in all the interviews as well. The scores, the professionalism, the interviews. It was just an outstanding group of individuals that came before us. And again, many of them were from the city of Cadillac, and some were not. The quality of candidates were excellent, and that's really a positive thing for me as a commissioner to see people that care and want to help the city by becoming a firefighter or a police officer, depending on the job that we're looking at. In this case, obviously, it's firefighter. And it's gratifying to know we have people that in our community and people that want to live in our community as firefighters, but they just blew me away, quite honestly.
I mean, I think that says volumes for Cadillac. We had 26 or 27 apply. I had the privilege of sitting on the committee for a year to determine if we were going to have 2 chiefs or a public safety director, and you know, we play a small part in it by administering the list and certifying the list and the testing and everything, and we've got a dedicated group of professionals on the police and the fire department. I have no questions on that. I mean, like I said, this has been unfortunate, it's been nerve-wracking, but, you know, when we made the decision, we felt that was the right thing to do at that time. So we didn't put that right to feel it, and we looked everything over on that too. Is there anything from anybody else, or is anybody ready to make a motion either way, or?
Well, I just want to say one more comment about going forward for the benefit of the people of the city of Cadillac. And I think it's probably just best if we can put this whole thing behind us and move on to new opportunities and kind of try and just take a lesson from, well, I know we all are all taking a lesson from our mistakes, and, you know, and just move on, because it would probably best benefit the people at the fire department as well as the individuals and the expenses they've incurred and the heartache they've incurred and all of that. I mean, it's really good to hang on to that sort of thing, so that's my thought.
Well, we did take ownership in getting involved in everything when actually we did have a city representative, but it was also, in this case, it would have been the fire department to do the interviews. They didn't want to necessarily do them because of the closeness with the on-call firefighters that had conflict of interest, and, you know, I see where they're coming from, and we took it on, but it's also, you know, as Bill said, when you live in this community and work in this community, you're bound to know what to do. So,
I'll make a motion to decline the grant for the relief requested from Blake Myron's petition.
second.
Yeah, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That's it. this time, if there's not anything else to discuss, there's no new business.
No, are you going to do an oral decision? Are you going to issue any kind of written decision? I think we need to discuss that among ourselves.
Okay.
So it's going to
Now,
benefit,
just relax.
Written
Well,
decisions, that's public information, right?
well, I think the question was, do we accept our city attorney's legal opinion as our written decision for the motion that we just passed?
It wouldn't be the legal opinion, but
Oh, it was,
What's a sitter?
the final decision
do you
document.
have revisions that you would like made to the draft that you have reviewed? Or is there anything you want to change?
In that draft.
Correct. Add, correct, change, take out.
I have nothing.
I don't have any change recommendations.
Okay, for the record,
Uh,
you're going to be submitting to them something that was presented outside of an open meeting. Now, just for the record, I want it clear, outside of an open meeting.
Public comment has come and gone.
Okay,
If we let the commission finish, I think your questions will be answered.
okay, thank you.
Basically, you've got a motion that is acceptable of this, and then this is public information.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the final decision on the petition.
To approve the proposed,
I'm sorry,
to approve the proposed decision without any changes.
without any changes.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Mm-hmm.
This is also public information. If you would like a copy of this, after the meeting, they are available to anyone that would like one. There's no new business.
If that didn't address my question, can I have my question addressed?
My position is public comment is passed, but I'll.
But we are we not in the proceeding, in the petition proceedings?
We have just completed an order of business, public comments were at the beginning. Certainly, we do have a.
This is part of the petition proceedings. If it is, we are part of the petition proceedings. I had a question. If you don't want to answer it, you can say so.
Here's a question for me.
No, for the commission, but they're obviously taking their lead from you, so I'm addressing the question to you. And that is, you've just adopted apparently a written decision that was deliberated and discussed in a closed session. I just want to make that clear for the record.
I think that's public comment, that time was at the earlier part.
It is not public comment, Your Honor. This is part of the proceedings,
What-
and that's
You're
fine.
the chair, not me.
I'll,
Go ahead.
We've already had public comment.
yeah, if you consider this public comment as opposed to part of the proceedings of the petition, then that's fine, I'll stop talking. I don't believe it is, but you can.
There's no other.
Do we have to wait until after?
We're going to adjourn the meeting.
I'd really like to address Mike, actually.
Well,
I think
apparently I'm out of order, and I'm not going to be out of order if that's not the position of the commission.
Go ahead, Mike. I'll let you have the floor.
You know, I just want to make it clear what just happened. You adopted apparently a written decision that was presented in a closed session, obviously discussed in a closed session, we were in a closed session for 45 minutes. I just want to make that clear on the record, so this record is clear for appeal. And if that's true, then please state it, and if it's false, then please state it, so it's clear on the record.
Was this public comment, or was this wanting to have a conversation?
Listen, we have a petition pending.
I understand.
Part of the proceedings on the petition are what just happened here. So it is not public comment, it is part of the proceedings. And I've been apparently allowed to address the commission, which I have.
And you had the public hearing, okay.
Yeah, I appreciate your question.
Linda takes the minutes.
Got that in the record of the minutes where Mike Nichols' attorney is at. This time, we'll to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.